Okay, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We are at April 30th, the last day of this month. And so we can see that the market is trying to push here. We had this really big sell off yesterday morning, and then a nice recovery by the bulls. Pretty strong. It looks like a nice V. And then the bears jumped back in and they're bringing us lower here. So we'll have to see what happens here. We're back right into all of the chop that we were in at the beginning of the week. And remember, I said a few days ago that 41.81 was the point of control for the whole first beginning of the week there. And so look where we are now, just right below that level, back in the chop. So I'm not in love with that. It'd be nice if we could either break below or above. And so let's jump to our high time frames and see what they have to say for this morning. Now our weekly is going to look pretty good because we're just at the end now. And so is the monthly because this is it. Now on Monday we'll have that closed monthly candle to look at. But for now, again, looking at our 3-month, no signs of exhaustion, looks extremely bullish here. Our monthly, same exact situation. And then the weekly here, which is going to close at the end of today. I guess we're really going to have to wait here because if we do end up start selling off, this picture is going to look a little bit different. But currently, still really no signs of exhaustion. We did have somewhat of a bullish doji candle there on the week that closed on April 23rd. And you can see that the bulls have tried to push it here, and now we have what looks like a bearish doji going on this current weekly bar. So today is going to be important to see if we push up and we get rid of that wick, or if we stay in this area and then maybe this starts to give us some signs of exhaustion. Now, the first signs of exhaustion would be if this RVI here that you can see is sloping upward for this candle, actually when the candle closes, ends up closing down here, because then we will have a push to a higher high, but the indicator pushing to a lower high. And so this is going to be important to look at when the day closes. Now, when we go to our daily here, we did have a little bit of exhaustion showing up off of yesterday's candle that closed. So here's a great example of what the weekly could look like, where we push to a higher high in price, but RVI comes down to make a lower high. And so when we closed up here around 42.03 yesterday, so that was, 2 p.m. Pacific time when we closed there, we had a good indication of a pullback. And so into the overnight, when this opened around 4200, you could have been looking for a short. But again, when you're looking at a daily candle, you need to dial down to the shorter time frames to really pinpoint and confirm everything. But just pointing out that when the daily closed yesterday, we had a pretty good indication of somewhat of a potential for a pullback. Now, when we look to the 4-hour, I remember yesterday we said that there really were no signs of exhaustion on this push up. Now, you could extrapolate all the way back to some of these previous highs, all the way back on the 25th, and make an argument there. But like I said, with these higher time frames, I'd preferably like to see something in the local area. For instance, maybe this previous candle pushing to a new high, and then this comes down or something like that. So overall, I didn't see any signs of exhaustion from that 4-hour perspective yesterday. And despite that, we did get a pretty healthy sell-off there. So currently, right now, what I am noticing is the fact that we have kind of a higher low here, but a lower low on the indicator. And we did also kind of get a divergence off of the low right around midnight as well. So we'll have to kind of watch. We are going against the grain here. There is an obvious kind of sell-off happening. And I do remember Ephraim saying that he expected down around 4150 area, and we made it to 68 yesterday. And so maybe it's in the cards that we get a deeper pullback today. But currently, like I said, off of the high from a 4-hour perspective, I don't see anything. But on the daily, we definitely do see some signs of the potential for a deeper pullback. Now, we did pull back from 4,200 to 4,173, so about 25 points. And so that might be all we get. But we're going to have to monitor these candles because this candle will be closing about a half hour after the open. And so we'll have to be cognizant of that. When we jump to our 60-minute, we did not really have any clear signs of exhaustion on this kind of push in the overnight. But what I am noticing is we did have a pretty clear bullish divergence here off of these lows. Now, we did have that jump off of 74 just a little bit earlier. And if you look at what happened here from a divergent perspective, we did push just a little lower in price. The indicator actually pushed a little higher. And so when this closed at 6 a.m., we did get somewhat of a bullish indication. And I'm also noticing just from a candlestick perspective, this huge wick to the downside, right? So it's kind of a little messy in here. You have this big bearish bar, the attempt from the bulls, then a huge sell-off again, but then the bulls took it right back up and closed almost back to the highs. And so it's a little messy in here from a candlestick perspective. But from that divergence perspective, we did have that bullish indication off the low here around 74.25. So we need to keep that in mind coming into the looking at the intermediate time frames here and see what they have to say. So we'll take a look here at the 30-minute. And first thing that I'm noticing is that the sell-off we had from that 85 area, we had a pretty clear signal there, pretty bearish looking. But again, now off of that overnight low at 74.25, we do have what looks to be a bullish indication. So 74.25, we're going to want to mark that on the charts and just kind of watch here to see if they can defend it. Because if that breaks, then we are probably going to head a little bit lower here. And there was an observation I made earlier that I think is on my 10-minute chart, and we'll discuss that in just a moment here. But just looking at what's going on here, you can see that big push, that 40-point push going into the close of yesterday, when we made it up there, we got that bearish signal. And so remember, when the daily closed, we had a bearish we had a bearish indication on the daily, and then here on some of these other time frames. In fact, if I go back to my 60-minute, I'm just kind of curious. The 60-minute didn't have it, but the 30-minute is pretty clear there of a bearish indication when we pushed to almost test the high from Thursday. But currently, we do have that bullish indication over here. So we have, let's see, we have a 60-minute, a 4-hour, and a 30-minute bullish indication off this low. But we do have to keep in mind that we are in a sell-off right now. So we might get a buildup of signals as it continually pushes lower. So this is going to be the line in the sand here, 74.25. On the 10-minute, like I said, we also had that similar indication here where we pushed to a lower low, not by much, but much higher low on RVI. And so we're going to have to keep this in mind here. Now there was that sell-off here from, and this is what I wanted to talk about. So when I got to the charts this morning, I noticed that we had this pretty clear leg here. Right, so we had the sell-off and we bounced, and then we have this very clear leg from 96 down to whatever that was, 75. Let's just call it 96 to 75. If you measure that leg, when we started pushing here in the pre-market, right around 5:30 Pacific, we came right almost to the, I think it was to the tick of the 50% retrace of that specific leg. and you also had some pretty decent support in the market. So it wasn't clean. It wasn't the cleanest, but you can see that for the most part in this general area, we had some support on these 3 candles here. Remember, these are 10-minute candles. So there's a lot of kind of little choppy price action you can't see. And so there was a bunch of support in that general area. And if you go back to the swing low of the leg from the high down to here, it was right in that 50% area. And sure enough, when the market was defended 75 and pushed, we turned right at that level. So just kind of an interesting observation. And so from that point, we pushed down just a little lower, and then we got that bullish indication. Now, what I want to point out here is that the 100% extension of this specific leg, the most recent leg in the market, is down here around 53.50. Now, 53.50 is a level we've been watching for a little while here in the room. It also happens to be right in line with the KP for today, and it's also, again, that 100% extension. And so as we come back there, I think a lot of people in the prediction point community are talking about the potential for the market to actually push down to this area. So it's just something I want to keep in mind today. And if you look back, although it's a little bit messy at this level, you can see clearly how there was really good defense of that level there, a really good defense of that level there and there. So there were multiple defenses of that level in the past. Now, we broke through that level very nice and cleanly and have not come back. And so this general area, maybe it's down to 50 even, because you can see a really clear defense of that level there and a really clear bounce from there. And then when we broke through, again, have not come back to test that. So this general 50 to 53, 54 area could be interesting if we break down. So again, we have 60-minute, 4-hour, 30-minute, and 10-minute bullishness off of this 74 quarter. All right, so we're going to want to keep that in mind coming into the open. And again, this short time frames, I consider 3-minute, 1-minute, and tick charts my short time frame charts. They're not necessarily going to give us the larger perspective on bigger moves, but again, if we get confirmation of what we saw in the higher time frames, it just kind of helps build the case. And so you can see here again, a very clear bullish indication off of the overnight low, again right around 74 quarter. So we might as well go ahead and mark that level so we don't forget that that's going to be important here into the open. And I will copy that over to my tick and to my 1 minute, just so I don't forget. So outside of that, just kind of looking at what's going on our super short time frames here. At the moment, there's really nothing going on from, I guess you can argue, oh, this is a really good thing here. So when I got to my charts, just around, I would say 6 a.m. I guess just when we were starting, I said that I tried a short over here at 83, and we had this really clear bearish divergence on some of these shorter time frames. I think it was the 10-minute and the 3-minute, and we were right at that KP. So I went ahead and I put the short in, I think at 82.75, 82.50. I moved it to 83 even to see if they could tick up and grab it. And literally within like 1 minute, we just dropped like 5 points and it never filled me. So this was a pretty good entry here, just based on some of the signals, based on the levels, and just unfortunately just did not get filled there. But currently you can see we're just kind of sideways. We're back in that 74 to 84 chop zone from all the way back at the beginning of the week here. And remember, 81 was that point of control, and we're right back there chopping right around 81. And currently no real signs of divergence here on the 3-minute, outside of the bearish divergence we got off of the KP earlier. And now it's just kind kind of coiling up here, if you will, like that. So super short time frames, again, are going to help with entries, but overall, remember, our intermediate and longer time frames are kind of indicating the potential for a bullish push off of 74.25. And so we're going to have to watch here, coming just a few minutes into the open. And that's going to give us, although we're in this protracted sell-off, and you can see we had the huge 40-point bull push up earlier, and then we've been teetering down and down. Despite that, we do have a lot of bullish indications here from 74.25. So coming into the open, if we can hold this area, then we should get at least an attempt by the bulls to push higher. And if that only kind of leads to us getting a 5 or a 10-point trade, and then that's it, and then the trend continues down, then that was enough for us to get a nice trade in, and then we'll have to reassess.